warning gave the men from the engine room time to get out from below the car deck. The trainee second officer, Einar Cook, also survived. Silva Linda was rescued shortly after Marga Rule. Captain Anderson and his second officer, Peter Canusa, went down with the ship. The death toll from the Estonia presents a stark insight into disaster. Those who survived were mostly strong, young, and male. Only 7 people over 55 survived, and there were no survivors under 12.
Those who didn't think for themselves just remained in the ferry. Think, for instance, about the senior citizens who just sat in their cabins when it started to keel over. They thought, oh well, we'll just wait since the crew have not said anything. But I knew where to go because I always find out in advance where the emergency exit is. And I think more people should take this to heart. They should find out for themselves. In the Estonia, although I can't be sure, I think many more could have got into a lifeboat or life jacket and then been fished out by a helicopter. But of those who died, 98% of them had stayed in the ship.
I learned a lot about myself during the tragedy. Things I didn't know before. I understand now what extraordinary reserves a human being can actually have. I was really surprised that I had so much strength. And that in an emergency, some human beings are able to focus and act just like a computer.
Immediately after the sinking, the Swedish, Finnish and Estonian governments set up an international commission of inquiry. Divers found the Estonia on the seabed at a depth of 300 feet. But the most important piece of evidence was found a mile from the wreck. The visor had been the ferry's main barrier from the sea, a hinged door at the front of the ship. The official animation shows the design of the Estonia's visor, which lifted to allow cars in and out, and was typical of roll-on, roll-off ferries all over the world. The investigators concluded that driving into the rough seas on the 27th of September 1994, the visor received such a severe buffeting that the 3 hinges, which held it in place, broke, causing the visor to smash against the hull. These violent movements made the loud metallic bangs which disturbed passengers and crew. Water began to flow in through the broken visor and then seep through the car ramp. The captain and crew of the Estonia were unaware of the danger because none of their instruments showed that the visor was breaking loose. As water entered the car deck, the ferry became increasingly unstable. Finally, at approximately 15 minutes past 1, the visor came off. As the visor fell into the sea, it pulled the car ramp down with it. From this moment onwards, the Estonia was doomed. Water now rushed into the ship at a rate of 20 tons per second. 20 minutes later, the weight of the water caused the ferry to tip over and sink, with approximately 750 people trapped inside. The official inquiry also investigated whether the ship sank because of incompetent decisions made by the inexperienced Captain Anderson. The inquiry concluded that the captain's decision not to slow down on the night the ferry sank increased the severe impact of the waves on the visor. But the inquiry felt that the captain should have been alert to the danger. In fact, 43 roll-on, roll-off ferries had sunk across the world between 1980 and 1994, an extraordinary rate of nearly 3 a year. And they all sank for the same reason. Water had flooded the car deck. After the Estonia disaster in 1994, all such ferries in Europe and the USA have been fitted with an extra airtight safety door behind the visor to prevent water entering the car deck, even if the visor fails. No roll-on, roll-off ferries in Europe or the United States have sunk since. Today, the Estonia remains on the seabed. Many survivors and families of the dead are unhappy that the Swedish government decided not to raise the wreck or recover the bodies inside.
It's a scandal. A big scandal is what it is. It would have been so simple to have gone down there and picked them up. There should never have been any discussion about it. They should have gone down the week after, when it was calm, and taken out the bodies that they found. But to this day, they are still there.
For many of those who survived the sinking of the Estonia, what haunts them the most is the brutality of the behavior they witnessed that night.
Nobody said women and children go first. This wasn't like the Titanic tragedy. In that film, women and children were asked politely to go to safety boats while the men waited in their suits. This couldn't have been more different.
I prefer a world and a life and a morale that is more like Hollywood than Estonia. But I just have to live with that in this case, in real life. That night at Estonia, there wasn't many heroes. And certainly I was not among them.